Tokens look harmless until there's 50 of them. If you have ever wanted to flood the board and actually win with that board, this is where to start. I hope your coffee is warm because today we are building token decks. We will learn together how to build any one, and we will go into 3 specific decks that I think add the most to the archetype. So subscribe for more videos like these and let me know what other themes you'd like to see. But let's start with what token decks actually are. Well, color-wise, token decks are for 71% in the color white. This is because white is all about making a bunch of small dudes. Then there's 42% in black, 52% in red and 56% in green. I think all 3 colors are secondary, and this shows how universal tokens are in Magic the Gathering. And then only blue has a bit less with 25% in blue, but that is still tertiary at least. So all colors have a little bit of tokens, but blue is a little bit weird with it. Blue is mostly about doubling tokens or transforming them, while black leans more into the aristocratic themes. Red is about dealing damage because of your tokens or with tokens, and green is about strengthening them, while white is about, well, everything because it is the primary color of it. Thematically, we see a lot of small critters like rabbits, squirrels or cats, and we see warriors and vampires who flock together too. Usually it is all about creatures that love to be together. Then there's many typal strategies with small creatures like goblins or elves in there. And we see a bunch of cloning in here too. Mostly out of just the creatures being together, but sometimes there's stuff like branching evolutions or mirrors. So that is there too. And then there are some beasts as well, even though that doesn't really feel like the classic token archetype. There are a bunch of tokens that are just boars or bears. So what to expect for this video? We will go by the purpose and strengths of token decks. Then we have some staples and what options you have in commanders. And 3 of them I have turned into decks and I will recommend them. And we will end with some gameplay tips. So let's go. Strengths and weaknesses of token decks. Well, first, of course, as always, I will start with the purpose of token decks. What do they mean? Why are they here? Well, token decks are here to slug up the board against aggressive decks for one, but they could also sometimes be the aggressor. With overwhelming board presence, they will make sure that you need stuff to protect yourself and that you will need to stop their strategy. They are a type of engine deck as well, where if they have multiple pieces on the board, well, they might be going off at any second. So watch out for many of those staple engines that token decks have. And while token decks are not controlling, often token decks have to be controlled. So you're fighting on the front of control whether you want to or not. Now, strengths of token decks are that they are meant as a byproduct of other spells, tokens. So they're often easy to get. You will be able to get a bunch of creatures out onto the battlefield. You will also refuel easily as long as you mind your resources. There's not an infinite number of resources in token decks, but it is pretty easy to get a decent board state that can be a threat. Winning at the moment can often translate into late game resources with these decks. So what that means is that if you have a full board state, you are often able to turn that into card draw or turn that into ramp. There's also a lot of doubling in tokens, and doubling in commander is often very good because if you double a doubler, you will already be going off with massive numbers of tokens. And because of it, tokens also have some very nasty combos. It is not the best archetype for comboing off, but there are some combos that you will accidentally have, and I think that makes for a very strong combo deck where your combos also work very well with the deck itself. There are some weaknesses. For example, tokens on their own are very simplistic usually because they often don't have an ability at all. Sometimes they have like flying or vigilance, but there isn't really much that is added to a token except for its power and its toughness. And often they are weaker than your usual creature. So because you often get 2 creatures, many times a token is just a 1/1 on its own. Too many board wipes are also a danger because they can bring you to a complete standstill. You are able to refuel pretty easily, but you again need to mind your resources, and that is because if you get board wiped, well, there's not really anything left because you are a token based strategy, and that means that you are a creature based strategy because of it. And often you will be in colors that lack proper removal. There's red with its damage and there's white with some good removal, but you are missing often black and blue, which are very strong removal colors. Now, if you have a token deck, there is a mindset that you should adopt. What you should know is that you should always think about how you will translate board presence into other states of the game. For example, if you have a bunch of tokens out on the battlefield, you can look how to get to make them to draw more cards, or to give you more mana or ramp later in the game. This is because you can have board presence at the moment, but with a board wipe again it can be removed instantly. So as long as you make sure that every time you get a nice full board, you will also get some additional benefits for the future, you will be sure that being board wiped isn't that bad. Also, you could be protective of your creatures. A 1/1 shouldn't be easily sacrificed in these decks unless you will get a win out of it. They could become more valuable later because you have some cards that strengthen them or use them in some other ways. And try to poke one bear at a time. Sometimes it can even pay off to attack the enemy of an enemy to make a friend. If you make multiple enemies, it can be very hard for a token deck to pressure them both at the same time. So I would say choose your battles wisely. Now there are a few types of token commanders and some are better than others. The main roles in token commanders are using tokens. 57% of the commanders that are used use tokens in some way, so sacrificing them or using them to maybe sling or get some card draw or mana. Also, there's a possibility to make tokens or make more tokens. 43% of commanders make tokens, so they themselves make a 1/1 for example, or they make more tokens by doubling them or something like that, and that consists of 18% of the commanders. Then 27% of the commanders strengthen tokens, so they are a lord type effect, and then 11% make big tokens. It's a bit less that this happens because token strategies usually are about going wide, but there are also some options for commanders that want to make big tokens or tokens that have some cool enter the battlefield effects or something like that. But there's also the option to play, which is a bit weird. I would not choose to focus on this, but 25% of decks are typal. You could play typal, but I would say that typal is definitely a different type of strategy. So even though it's in 25% of token decks, I would say playing goblins is playing goblins. It's just something a little bit different than just playing tokens, because you can play goblin creatures in those too, and you don't necessarily need them to be tokens at first. Now let's talk about the meat of this video. What does any token deck need? What is the core of your deck? Like with any deck, you will need ramp, removal, board wipes and card draw, but that is not really weird. So what is different about a token deck? Well, you will need token makers. Of course, you will need cards that make tokens, because otherwise you aren't a token deck. Also, often you need token doublers. It's because it is the strength of tokens that you will need those. But I would say make a bit of room for this. They are often pretty expensive because this is what makes any token deck strong, and there are a bunch of them. And also you need to make sure that you don't have too many doublers, because token doublers take a bit of room from token makers, as they do the same thing but just only work when you are already making tokens. So you will need to have a certain ratio. I would say at least 3 token makers for every doubler that you have. Then token strengtheners, cards that make your tokens stronger, or token users, which are cards that use your tokens to make mana, draw cards, or perhaps to sacrifice them, and could even replace those strengtheners if you need to. Now that we know what a deck consists of, we need to choose a commander. So I will be starting with the top 9 commanders and their archetypes. Note that I won't mention every commander, I'm saying this every time. I'll just dive really deeply into the commanders that add something to the archetype, but if you want to see a specific one, let me know and I could do a deck tag, for example. Now, starting with the commanders, I have Balin the Haymaker. Definitely a haymaker in that sense. This is what I call a token user. It is a card that definitely doesn't do anything like making tokens, but he adds a really cool way to get value from your tokens. Now, these don't have to be token creatures, so this works with treasures, for example, as well. But you have 3 cool abilities, 2 of them really useful. One is to make mana, one is to draw cards, and one that isn't the most useful is putting 3+1 counters on Balin and giving Balin trample. Of course, this could be a way to finish the game, but usually you will want to use Balin as a value engine with all of your tokens. So I think it is cool that we have a card that is just about making a bunch of tokens and using them to draw cards. So this adds a bit to the archetype. Then we have Caesar, the Legion's Emperor, which is a token maker and user. So of course makes tokens because whenever you attack you may sacrifice another creature, and then you can create 2 1/1 soldier tokens with haste that are tapped and attacking. So makes tokens, but also uses them of course because you can sacrifice creatures. Other abilities are to draw cards, so draw a card, lose a life, or season deals damage equal to the number of creature tokens you control to target opponent. So that is of course the way you will finish the game. If you have a bunch of tokens, you can then sacrifice one of your tokens or creatures and deal a bunch of damage to one target opponent, attacking them until they can't block anymore. Next is Jetmir, and I really love Jetmir because of, well, he, I think, was the coolest commander from New Capenna. And this is a classical lord, just strengthens tokens and doesn't do anything else. But he is really powerful once you get the numbers. So the ability of Jetmir allows you to give your creatures in total 3 power, vigilance, trample and double strike. This is very powerful, but you do need some stuff. If you have 3 or more creatures, you will get 1 of those power points and vigilance. So you will already be able to attack and block at the same time with your all of your creatures, but also your tokens. Then once you have 6 or more creatures, you get another power and trample. And if you have 9 or more, you get another power and double strike. Once your creatures have double strike and 3 power extra, so often they will have at least 4 power, it will be very easy to attack in and block with even 1 of your tokens. So imagine having 9 of them. That will mean that you have at least 36 damage to deal out with double strike. So it will get exponentially better once you have enough tokens. Drawback of course being that Jetmir doesn't make any tokens himself, so you will need a bunch of assistance with him. Another one that doesn't really make tokens themselves are Adrix and Nev, the twin casters, who have the ability to double the amount of tokens created whenever 1 or more tokens are created under your control. So I think this is my favorite version of a doubler because of its simplicity, but it is just that. So you will need a bunch of other things that help you create the tokens. Now this does remove the need for any other token doublers a bit, but it can still be very strong to have them. So I think In a way, that's a bit of a drawback, that you want more token doublers because you already have one and that makes token doublers better, but you also need to have the tokens that you need. So it is a bit of a luxury situation in that case, of the deck building at least. Then I have Bernard, the Ginger Sculptor. This is one of the commanders that can make any creature into a token. So this one makes strong tokens from creatures. So you will be able to make your creatures into pastries, and then you will make them into 3/3s because of Bernard's first ability to give every creature that is a food or a golem +2/+2 and trample. So any creature that you turn with the second ability, which is whenever another non-token creature dies, so you will need them to die and then you will need to exile them in order to make a copy of the creature that will be a 1/1 at first, but then again with the ability it will be a 3/3 because it is a food golem artifact creature that can also be tapped for 2 to sacrifice them. So that's also a possibility, but usually I think you want the creatures back and use their abilities once more. Then Jenny Faye, which is also a token strengthener, but really transforms your tokens into dogs with vigilance or cats with haste. So your many 1/1s will be 2/2s or 3/1s. Then Brudiclad, which is a really classical one, I think, that transforms tokens into other tokens. So again, you will need token creators, but Brudiclad is also a token maker, making 2/1s, which you can then turn into other tokens, and also has an artifact sub-theme because he is creating artifacts himself, and also gives all of your creature tokens haste. So that is one other theme that you don't need. Zinnia, I think, is a really cool new one from Bloomburrow that makes strong tokens from creatures, but they will be again 1/1s without the extra 2/2 and trample. Thing is, the offspring mechanic really helps because you can use it whenever you cast a creature and they don't need to die. So you could also bounce them, for example, to get the ability again. The offspring mechanic does mean that you have to pay an extra 2 to get a 1/1 version of whatever you cast as a copy. And last, and definitely not least, is Ghired, the Mirror of the Wilds, which is a commander for 3 mana in Naya colors, so the classical token colors, that will give every one of your non-token creatures the ability to tap to create a token that's a copy of target token you control that entered the battlefield this turn. So it does need to be a new token that you create. You can't just have a creature token and then copy it over and over. You need to create a token this turn, and then all of your other non-token creatures can then tap to make another copy of that token. That will then also have entered the battlefield, but we really don't care. We just need one good token to enter, and then all of our creatures get tapped to create a bunch of versions of that token. And that was it for all of the top 9 commanders, and now we will go onto the 3 decks that I think are my favorite. I've also already kind of foreshadowed this one, but Jetmir is my personal favorite. The type of commander that Jetmir is that he is, again, just a lord. So he lords over your white board. But the leader of the cabaret adds something weird, where he can give all of your creatures 3 power and the ability to attack in with double strike, trample and vigilance. So they will be very strong on the attack and on the defense, but 3 power per creature on top is actually a really rare ability for just one creature lord. And of course you need a lot of creatures, but I feel like people stare too much at the keywords of this commander and not at that power. That can also be a very strong thing that you can build around. The lore of Jetmir is that he is one of the 5 demon lords of New Capenna, which means that what he does today is pretty much unknown, but he used to be the heart of the party of the city. He chose where the parties are, who could get in and who would be the entertainment, and most important of all, who got that sweet halo. Before New Capenna, in Old Capenna, Jetmir was part of a group of Leonin druids who worshipped the bounty of nature. So this is another sub-theme thematically that you can have in this deck. Your mechanical game plan here will be to make a bunch of tokens and go as wide as quickly as possible. You then protect your creatures for long enough for you to get in with them, because there is no haste built in here. And meanwhile, you can use the extra power on your creatures as a way to generate value. Now the deck parts for this are like I always build them. 5 board wipes, 10 pieces of card draw, 38 lands, 10 ramp pieces and 5 removal pieces. But specifically, I think you will need some things that are different than other token strategies. Usually you will need a bunch more lords, but as Jetmir is already a lord himself, you will need a bit less of those. So I have 3 in this deck. Then I have 12 protection cards / getting in with battle damage cards. I have 12 because you will need these for your creatures. You care less about strengthening the creatures, so you have a bit of space for this. And you really care a lot about having those creatures around. Once your opponents see that you have 9 creatures or more, you will need that defense. I have only 2 reach cards because you can definitely use them as finishers, but you already have a sort of combat theme because of Jetmir. And then I have a bunch of token creators, 21 in this deck, because Jetmir needs that bulk. I think this could be a little bit less, but like I said, you need the bulk of them. So I would say get at least 20. Then there are 7 create more token cards, which don't create tokens on their own, but synergize with the bulk of your creators. As you have 21, it is so many that you can have a bit more of those create more token cards. Also, I had room for it, so I like those in my decks. The strongest new and old cards are something that I really like looking at, but I'm starting with the old cards for this one. So Krenko, Tin Street, Kingpin is a really good one. And an example of any creature that makes tokens equal to their power, because again you will be boosting their power with the ability of Jetmir. Krenko, for example, says that whenever he attacks, you put a +1 counter on Krenko, usually making him a 2/3, and then you create a number of 1/1 red goblin creature tokens equal to his power. So usually the first time you attack with Krenko, you already get 2 goblins, which is already good. But of course with Jetmir you will add that 3 power if you are already getting a bunch of tokens. So that will mean that you will get at least an extra 3 goblins on top of that. So that is very good. Another thing I really like are the mutation cycles. So artifact mutation, for example, is a card for 2 mana that destroys target artifact and then creates X 1/1 green stepperlings, where X is the artifact's mana value. You have this for auras too, for example, and it does exactly the same thing. But this is really good because it is removal and creates a bunch of 1/1s. Then Champion of Lambhold is a great way to get in with damage. So Champion of Lambhold says whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you put a +1 counter on them, and creatures with power less than Champion of Lambhold's power can't block creatures you control. So many creatures will enter the battlefield to add +1 counters to Champion of Lambhold, and that will mean that your opponent won't be able to block all of your small creatures, and you will win. For new cards, I have Exalted Sunborn. This card is a deck breaker, an archetype breaker for tokens, because it is not legendary, so it can be copied, and Exalted Sunborn has the ability to double the amount of tokens that are created whenever you create tokens under your control. So the Exalted Sunborn, apart from being a flying lifelink angel with 4 power, also just adds this ability and can be copied to create very strong Sunborn tokens that will spiral out of control in just a few doubling sessions. And flavorfully, I have Grand Crescendo in this deck. It is also strong because it is a 2 white and X instant that will give your creatures indestructible. So it is a protection spell that you really need, but also for that X cost creates 1/1 citizens that also just add to that whiteness that you need. Now what makes Jetmir unique? I feel like Jetmir is the best classical token lord, like I said before. While he doesn't make any of them, he adds enough power to make a 1/1 useful as a 4/1 attacker with double strike. So you could also say that he is a go white commander, but in Commander that usually means being a token commander. So I added him in here. Also adding this much power allows for certain Gruul power synergies. And I have a bunch in this deck, but there are many more that you can choose that can turn Jetmir into a toolbox commander. Then the strengths and weaknesses of Jetmir, where his strengths are that he just needs a white board, but he doesn't really need much else to strengthen even the weakest of tokens. And you have a deck here that can be solely focused on creating as many tokens as possible because of it. And I really like decks like these that force you into a way of building, because it's easy to upgrade decks like these with every set. Now the weaknesses are that Jetmir doesn't really help to make tokens or double them, or do anything with tokens directly in fact. So you will need a bunch of token creators and doublers to get to that magical number 9 of creatures. And Jetmir doesn't have any protection or combo potential himself, so he's just a classical lord in that sense. Also, last but not least, I have one thing to note, which is that all of the deck links will be down below, posted there for you to criticize. This one I personally find very interesting, Zinnia Valley's Voice, because it is a little bit different from just making very big tokens. Zinnia's ability is to give all creature spells that you cast Offspring 2, meaning you can pay an additional 2 mana to have a 1/1 token copy enter of the creature that you are playing. Now this makes for a very good way to make very good tokens, but not strong ones. And Zinnia has the ability to strengthen themselves with extra power, where X is the number of other creatures you control with base power 1. So all of those Offspring creature tokens will increase Zinnia's power. And if you have any other way to create 1/1s, then of course that is great too. The lore or identity of Zinnia is a bit weird, because they didn't really get a part of the story from Bloomburrow. But they are called the Sovereign of Life, not because they make babies or something with anyone entering the battlefield, but because they defeated the Dragonhawk by outpacing it and outrunning it. So because they escaped, they are now the Sovereign of Life. One day Zinnia crashed into Tree City, the main city of Bloomburrow, but no one knows where they are from. Still, Zinnia is now traveling the world singing romantic ballads which apparently bring joy and laughter. And maybe that is where the Offspring part comes. I'm not really sure what kind of romantic ballads they would be to bring joy and laughter. But okay. The only reason for Zinnia to make babies that I could find is that they sometimes sing at baby showers. But well, the mechanical game plan is more interesting here. You play creatures with abilities that aren't about their power, then you create 1/1 copies of them, and you make more of those tokens and focus on their enter the battlefield effects, so protection is less necessary. You could also have some creatures that have great abilities, like sacrificing them to protect another creature. Then you attack with all of your small guys when needed, or you use reach from all of the creatures entering, and also Zinnia could finish some games on their own, with that extra power that they gain. The deck parts in this case are the same for card draw, lands, ramp, removal and board wipes, but in this case you will need less protection, I would say less than 5. Token creation is an extra, I accidentally have 5, but this is not really a theme. Where real unique themes come in is that I have 17 token targets that I want to double with Zinnia's ability, 9 duplicators of those tokens, and then 6 cards that double the tokens that you get. Now the strongest old cards for Zinnia are Panharmonicon, not the oldest of course, but pretty old right now. Man. Of course, doubling the abilities of all of those enter the battlefield triggers. Selfless Spirit's really good, because of course you can sacrifice the Selfless Spirit and the token to give creatures you control indestructible, so it is also a protection spell. Siege Gang Commander I really love, it's 5 mana for a 2/2, and usually when it is a high mana cost and a low amount of power and toughness, it will be a good card in Zinnia, because then for 2 more mana you can create another Siege Gang Commander and you will create in total 6 red goblin creature tokens that you can all sacrifice to the goblin or use to just strengthen Zinnia. So that is for 7 mana, 7 1/1s. So it could be an extra 7 power for Zinnia. That is really good. And then for new ones, I have Starfield Vocalist from Edge of Eternities. That is a 4 mana creature that doubles the triggered abilities of permanents entering the battlefield. And of course, Starfield Vocalist can be doubled himself. And then Delny is a bit of the same. If an ability of a creature you control with power 2 or less triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. But what I also love is that creatures you control with power 2 or less, so 1 also, cannot be blocked by creatures with power 3 or greater. So a lot of your opponent's creatures can block your small creatures, and you will get a lot of more use out of the small creatures that you are creating and might win the game through this. And then Nesting Dovehawk, I think I love because of the continuous populate ability. You want a few of these, not too many in this deck because of the many other things that you need. Now what makes this deck unique, I think, is that any card with an effect that's not about combat stats is great here. So it can be very flexible and really a toolbox kind of deck. And that is one of the strengths, but also another strength is that any card can be a token, so you will not be screwed when one of the tokens you need are really falter. Zinnia's effect also scales with your small tokens, and less than 2 power is becoming a real theme in Magic the Gathering in the years to come, and has been doing so. There are multiple finishers like pingers or combat damage in this deck that will slowly win you the game, so they won't feel threatening at first. And Jeskai puts you in a unique control type shell if you want, where your creatures are a bit of a toolbox, but you also have the opportunity to be great at instant speed if you get to that. Also, again, your tokens can be anything. Now, weaknesses are that you are weak to board wipes in this case, very much so, because you lose green's bounce ability from it, where enough mana can help you get back into the game. In this case, you do have a bunch of card draw if you want, but I would say it is very hard to get back from a board wipe, so you need some protection for you against that. You're also limited in the big threats department because of your focus on small creatures with a big upside. But yeah, you don't want to focus on big power creatures, so you don't have any usually in this deck. And also you need your commander because, of course, your other creatures might not be as good. Of course, they can still do something, but having Zinnia out is very important. Now, this is mitigated a little bit because Zinnia is just 3 mana, but of course, it can be hard to protect and your commander and the rest of your board at the same time. Now, Ghired is, while not my personal favorite, I think the strongest one because of his combo potential in a token deck. Ghired has Mirror of the Wilds, I mean. It's just 3 mana for a commander. Has haste himself, so already can do the thing he wants to do immediately. And then non-token creatures you control have tap to create a token that's a copy of target token you control that entered the battlefield this turn. So basically populate, but it only works on the turn a token has entered. Now every non-token creature you control can tap to create a copy of any token that entered. So for example, you could copy another creature and then make all of the non-token versions of any creature you have on the battlefield tap to create another token that's a copy of that creature. That's one example, but there are many ways to storm off. So the type of commander Ghired really is creating copies of your big creatures with your other creatures. The lore of Ghired is that he was a Celestian who turned to the Gruul clans, which is why he is Naya colored. So a Celestian green-white that also got red from the Gruul. He turned coats because he saw a boar god during the War of the Spark, making him Gruul, but with love for his animals that kept him strongly in white as well. He then traveled to Thunder Junction to experience really wild lands, not the Celestian softness or the trapped Gruul members, and apparently he did find them. More boars here. The mechanical game plan will be to make creatures, duplicate your best one, and keep duplicating that one creature into infinity if you can. The deck parts here are card draw, ramp, removal are the same. I did just go with 2 board wipes for now, but you should try to get more. The only thing is that you don't want anyone, not even yourself, to force you to remove creatures of your own. The problem was I needed enough enabling of haste for copies or other creatures when they enter. Populate abilities and token duplication are needed too, plus tappers that help you create, that help you use Ghired's ability. So tappers, what do I mean with that? Tappers are cards that love to tap or that help you tap multiple times. So for example, a card could tap to create another 1/1 token, or whenever a card is tapped you draw a card, or a card could help you untap all creatures you can, or even permanents you control. So that, but also, so I have 6 tappers and then 17 duplication cards that will help you populate as well, and 4 just token creators. Then there are 10 populate cards, so the duplication cards will help you create your first copy token, and then the populate cards can make even more of those versions. I have 3 protection cards and just 1 reach card for now, which I think should be fleshed out too. Now the strongest cards are, for example, when we are looking at the old cards, Midnight card, because of its combo potential. It's a 3-mana creature that says whenever another creature enters the battlefield, even token creatures, you untap Midnight Guard. So when you create a copy of a token with Midnight Guard gets untapped and you can do it again. So that's immediately a combo in that sense. Then Village Bell Ringer, which is essentially the same, but Village Bell Ringer says that when he enters the battlefield, you untap all creatures you control. So that means that you should copy Village Bell Ringer to have a token of him enter, and then you untap all creatures you control. So you can use all of your tappers again. So that works better with the tappers. And then there's of course Kiki Jiki, the Mirror Breaker. If there's any deck I would say that this fits in, it's here. Well, of course there are multiple combo ways, but I think it just fits, because Kiki Jiki has the same type of ability where he says to tap to create a token that's a copy of target non-legendary creature you control, and that token has haste. Now this is something that already was broken, but Ghired just does the same in multiple colors, so he has a little bit more flexibility. I think this still fits really well though, because Kiki Jiki can create a token that's a copy of any creature every turn, and that of course combos off really well, starting the chain of Ghired triggers. Now for new cards I have Eartha Joe, Frontier Mentor, also from Thunder Junction, because she says you get that whenever you activate an ability that targets a creature or player, you copy that ability. So of course, targeting any token, you will copy the ability to create more. Then Wily Duke, because it is a great tapper, because whenever Wily Duke becomes tapped, you gain 1 life and draw a card. And Terror of the Peaks is just really good, also from Thunder Junction. All 3 new cards were, because whenever another creature you control enters the battlefield, the terror deals damage equal to that creature's power to any target. As you are creating more big tokens, this will help really well to be your reach card. Now I will be looking for more cards like these, so let me know which ones I should include, and we can make this an upgraded deck. Now what makes this deck unique, I think, is the way in which your non-tokens will help you populate really quickly. You can be very aggressive in this deck, and like with Zinnia, this deck can be very toolboxy. You just need to find ways to tune this deck, and then I think this deck has a really high ceiling. The strengths of this deck are that high ceiling for skill levels. Also, I think this gives you a lot of fun deck building challenges because of how many themes you need. And it is really punchy and feels absolutely cruel with token synergies. Now the weaknesses are that it has a definite lack of board wipes for now, as they go against all of your strategies. and too many sub-themes are needed to make this work, as Ghired only adds haste and the populate part, because you'll need an absolute bulk of duplication on top of tappers and targets for your duplication. That just forces you to get a bunch of cards in here to make this consistent. So how do you actually choose your token commander? I would say there are two choices to really make, and that seems really simple, but really it isn't, because they are sliding factors. Firstly, you have to choose how wide do you want to go. So for example, with Ghired that we just saw, we aren't really going that wide unless we are comboing off, but we love getting big creatures out, which is also a token strategy. But for example, with Jetmir, you want to go really wide, and that is its only focus. Now, the second choice you need to make is whether you want big creatures that smash or small creatures that ping. So, thing is, even with small creatures, you can still force them to be your win con by having them attack, giving them unblockable or something like that. Or you can have a bunch of small creatures, which only works usually with smaller tokens, that will allow you to ping, so that reach factor is a bit more prevalent over things like trample or infinite creatures or unblockable. Now I have a little bit of an art intermezzo, because for this video I wondered whether there was an artist that makes the most token arts. Well, one is definitely the most iconic, I'd say, Victor Adam Minguez. So I asked him on Instagram what his secret was for making these arts, because I mean, he made Anointed Procession, Divine Visitation and Doomed Artisan, for example, which are really big in the token world. But he said he never thought about it and doesn't know about the mechanics before making his art. He follows the brief and tries his best, and while I think that answer is beautiful in a way, I feel like there is something magical here that happens. Because look at this iconic token doubler. We see Gideon first and notice a group of people around, but honestly when I first looked at this, I hadn't even noticed that the many people were mummies. See, tokens should be a part of the art, never the main focus, but on a card that just does something with tokens, how do you show this? Well, you light the people in such a way that they blend in with the environment, the floor, the walls, the sun. In this way, Gideon is first to be noticed, then the people being carried off, and then the mummies, telling the stories of mummies taking their next family with them to embalm exactly as it should be told. Or then Divine Visitation, which tells the story of angels entering instead of other tokens, bird tokens specifically in the art. What happens is people are feeding the birds and they first get the attention of pigeons before the angels surprise the citizens with their visit. The flavor explaining from the angels' POV that they appreciate the offer but politely decline to eat any birdseed. The art lets you see the angels first in this case, not nameless tokens but specifically angels, as it's provided that's what is being created. Only then do you see the fountain and the city, showing us we are on Ravnica, and then you might see the people, and only the people, really watching and to see the pigeons and the real story. A single bird in the sky is left fake, showing you how alike angel wings are to those of pigeons, making us doubt whether angels might sometimes eat birdseed anyways. The angels themselves are bland and all the same, instantly telling us that these are tokens, which I think is even more genius than making them very complicated. So light can show us which are the tokens. The fact that there are more can as well. But that's not all. Doomed Artisan creates a likeness to himself, one that could turn to life at any point. But we see immediately which the token is. Of course, it's the grayed out one. Still, how do we know that this will be a token? Well, the human stands a bit to the side to look at his work. He's also not entirely centered on his own. The chisel and his viewpoint us both to the artwork, making it the new center of the artwork from Victor. Weirdly, the focus here is more on the token than on the creature itself. That should be, as the sculpture becomes stronger than the sculptor in this creature's mechanic. The sculptor is lost making sculptures, and we were lost a little bit here too, but then again, enough about art for now. Let's get to how to win. Two ways that I show always are finishers and combos. Finishers, in this case, I have talked about a little bit before and how to choose your commander, but we have pingers and unblockable or trample. Pingers are, for example, War Leader's Call that deal damage every time a creature enters, just like impact tremors. In this case, you want pingers to trigger whenever a creature enters. The other choice you have is to create unblockable or trample creatures. For example, a Chroma's Will help you get in with that damage, or Delny's Streetwise Lookout that we saw before, which can help you get your small creatures to be slightly more unblockable. Now, combos aren't really usual here because you are more of an engine type deck that also wants to attack, so it's a little bit more convoluted than, for example, with graveyard strategies. But we have, for example, Balin plus Aggravated Assault, which allows you to tap 10 tokens, which is a lot, with Balin's ability, and you have enough for Assault to untap them over and over. Now you could only do that, but you could also attack with some other of your creatures, and if you have a safe way to attack one of your opponents, well, getting infinite combat triggers will enable you to make them lose the game at least. And then I have shown you some other ways to untap infinitely, for example with Kiki Chiki plus the Village Bell Ringer. In this case you can tap Kiki to make a new Bell Ringer, then you untap Kiki because of the ability of the Bell Ringer, and then you can immediately repeat this. Now of course with Ghired this is really strong on its own, but otherwise in this case you will be creating infinite Bell Ringers in any case, even without Ghired. So that will mean that you have at least an infinite number of tokens to attack with. Ghired on his own also combos with Midnight Guard, which allows you to make a copy of a creature by tapping the guard, then you untap the guard because of it and you repeat. Now in Ghired's own deck this of course works, but in any Naya colored deck or deck that has Naya in it, you can of course use this combo too. Now this one isn't really a combo, but I think cards like Exalted Sunborn that allow you to create double amounts of tokens really work well with creating tokens of itself. So while it is not really a combo, I think doing this once or twice can quickly net you 2 or 4 doublers, and that goes off really quickly because the next time you will be doubling that number again. And then there's another way that looks a little bit like Balin and Aggravated Assault but a bit easier, is Helm of the Host plus Combat Celebrant, where you attack with the Celebrant by exerting it to get another combat, and you get another new Celebrant that then hasn't been exerted, so you can then use it to repeat the process. So that is the last combo I have here, but there are multiple more, and also I think there's so much doubling, for example, that having a combo that works with double cards really helps you because it is so consistent, because you have so many versions of it. Now aside from combos, I have some playstyle tips for token decks. First of all, you need to be mindful of your small creatures. They are more useful than you might think at first. Even a 1/1 can become a danger to your opponents later. Then think of each part of your strategy as a piece of the engine. While you might not be a combo deck, you'll need synergy for your tokens to be good. So make sure that you treat your deck as if you are creating an engine. The first cards might not be as strong, so you need to have a little bit of patience but still be protecting your creatures. So think about the long-term strategy. This also works with the next tip, which is to poke one bear at a time. You don't want to be attacking multiple opponents and making them scared of you all at once. Make sure that only one of the players feels your wrath, and then maybe they might be shouting at the air until your other opponents are next up on the block. Also, only swing if you gain from it. Winning is gaining too, of course, so if you can win the game, of course, swing ahead. But make sure that you can at least deal a sizable amount of damage, because oftentimes it's very dangerous to attack with your tokens. Make sure that you either don't lose them or you win something from it, like drawing a card, for example. Also make sure to have protection up, or to transfer your board presence at least into late game value, like drawing cards or ramping. Now I want to thank you for watching, and if you are here, you should definitely subscribe. I know that only less than 5% of people that watch this will be subscribed. Oftentimes over a longer period of time, well, only 3%, and I'm watching right now, yeah, only 3% is subscribed to my channel. And I think you should, because if you want to learn more about building decks, or you have a certain deck type that you want to explore together, you could just tell me, and I will make the video. So it can be a very fun process like this. And I also want to plug my Discord channel, because it has a lot of potential for people coming together and talking a bit about Magic and what they love. And we are mostly positive on there. I mean, it's in the rules. So if you like being positive about our game, let me know, and or just check out the Discord yourself. It's in the description as well. But subscription is important too. And with that, again, thank you for watching and have a nice day.